in May when you flew out with to speak to the board about what your plans were moving forward. And speaking to the chairman, he said he gave you the opportunity to speak and look back at the seasons that Peterborough United have had in the last 5 or 6 years, and we haven't really moved forward. We've been in pretty much the same place. Was that key to get your point across as an outsider to show what needs to be done to change things?
Well, I think in many of the conversations I had, speaking to our chairman 2 or 3 times a day, and in a number of those conversations towards the end of the last campaign, he was not leading, I was leading, but he was certainly with me every step of the way, and believing we cannot continue to finish anywhere between 8th, 9th, 12th, within 3 or 4 points either direction. And our chairman used the terminology, and I've watched his video back. He used the terminology. It's madness to continue to do something that fails, and he's certainly not a failure in life, is he, Darren McAntony, or the new board members either. They're very successful business people. So my view is we have to change things. We have to, of course, be mindful of the players that contractually the board will say unless we re-sign them, they will, if the offer is acceptable to them, then they would move on. So there's been a lot of factors, but first and foremost we've had to change something, because otherwise we'd be finishing 64, 65 points and just failing at the end of the season, and what the objective was is a minimum to be in those playoffs.
Was the key the mentality? The mentality had to change, really. I mean, obviously you look at how many points were lost from winning positions last season, and that's a mental side of the thing more so than a physical kind of thing.
The chairman speaks about it often, and he's entitled to. He's very statistically driven in business and in football, and he's entitled to when he sees repeated things happen that lead to the club not achieving its goals. And so if you look at all over the pitch, not just in defensive areas, but all over the pitch, we seem to lack that final thing, whatever it is, whatever was missing up in the air, to turn 30 points, that when you're in winning positions to be able to defend properly and be able to see the game out and be able to win matches. And we had to go away from a football club as relying on 1 or 2 players. There'll always be a top goal scorer. We're fortunate to have Marriott. There'll always be a top goal scorer. There'll always be a top assist, and we were fortunate with the performances on a regular basis from Marcus. But the good teams, if you looked at Wigan and you looked at Blackburn, the 2 best successful teams in the league last season, yes, they had the likes of Danny Graham and Dax. Yes, they had the likes of Pearl and different people at Wigan, but it was a team, because equally they had strong defenders, strong midfield players, and that's the objective that we've had this season, is to make us less reliant on 1 or 2 and more reliant on the team.
Obviously you had to ship players out quickly. I think the first player to leave was Callum Chettle, who obviously had been out on loan. You probably hadn't seen too much of him in terms of a Peterborough shirt, but that started the ball rolling, and obviously Barry's had to do a lot of work during the summer. He's never had his phone glued to his ear, I think, but once one transfer happens, you have to keep moving the ball, don't you?
Well, listen, the summary is, I think it's 14 out and 14 in. And when you break that down, there was 3 or 4 by natural evolution that they hadn't been getting lots of game time. They'd been out on loan. And whilst they were reviewed by both Grant McCann and his staff and myself and my staff, they'd never done enough to be, other than Matty Stevens, to be coming back into the building and given a chance. So that becomes natural, that you get some players that drift away. Of course, there's a number of players that I went to the States and said I wanted to keep and help build my team. The board, of course, led by our chairman, reminded me that this club has a strategy, which I knew 100% when I come in, that if players are not looking to add to a final year of a contract and the value is set and someone makes it, they go. So in an ideal world, would I want to keep Lopez? Absolutely. I thought he was a special talent. People locally criticised the young man on a lot of occasions. He's went for well over £1 million, into a top club and a top manager. Would I like to have kept Andrew Hughes? Yes, of course. Would I like to have kept Guion? Yes, of course. Who knows what's going to happen with Marriott and Madison? Would I like to keep them? Yes, of course. Some of the other players that have left, then they've had to move on for us to create a room to have that change that says we don't want to be a 9th, 10th in the table team. Peterborough United is a one city team. This is a city that I've been in for 29 years, so a lot longer than some, but a lot less than others. But I've stood on the London Road end on, as you know, Phil, firsthand, on many, many occasions, on some of the great nights and of course on some of the not so good nights. And I want to be a part. I only want to play a part. Our chairman will play a part. Everyone will play a part, all the way down to the players, to the academy staff, everyone. I just want to play a part in helping the club go back into the Championship, because I was a manager elsewhere in my journey when Peterborough United was in the Championship. I used to be jealous. I used to be jealous when I would be leaving the city on a Saturday morning to make my journey, and I would see what the Championship meant to our supporters when I'd see them walk about the town, and I would see busloads and train loads of supporters of opposition arrive, and as we all know, the ABAC Stadium was a hub of atmosphere on match days. And that's not decrying League One, because it's a fantastic competition, but let's be honest, the Championship now has got to a level where it's very, very special.
When you're doing your recruiting, did you have anything in mind in terms of the order you would do things? It would just be whoever you could get over the line first? I mean, you started at the back and sort of, you obviously had Alan Chapman come in and obviously defensive rear guard as well. Was there anything consciously to start at the back and move forward, or was it a case of what became available and what you could get done?
I think you start off with what business you believe that you can do fairly quickly. And the business that you can do fairly quickly is either lads that's out of contract, or very quickly perhaps where our chairman or Barry can tell me that if they're supporting me in a player that I'm recommending, that they can get a deal done to buy that player very quickly. So if you look at our recruitment, people like, Rhys Bennett coming in the door, and he was on a free contract out of Mansfield. Aaron Chapman was on a free contract out of Accrington. So they're the type of players that become easier to sign, in the sense that we knew very early they were high up on our list, and we could go and get that business done. But the harder parts of the business just goes on throughout the summer. Like, we're still looking for one or two now, and the harder parts of those business become as clubs don't do the business early, and they end up having to keep players because they can't sign any themselves. So there's no strategy to sign a certain player in a certain position, but obviously it would be foolish not to think that the spine of your team is quite essential, and we've done most of that spine. We for me, one missing link.
In terms of the players that you brought in, are there players in this squad that you've managed to get over the line that you actually didn't think would get over the line because of interest elsewhere? Is that down to you as a manager to persuade them that their future's here, and Barry to get the deal over the line in terms of the pen?
I would like to think that would be some credit given indoors as an inside the football club, nothing externally, because our supporters are never going to be aware as to, when they see us sign a player, as to what level of interest was really in the player, because agents now hype the market to a level where you could have one club interested, and we all read on the various social media sites and the various news sites, it could be six. In reality, there's one. I would like to think people like Naismith, people like Woodyard, people like Godden, they had significant interest. Latterly, Jason Cummings had a choice of 4 or 5 clubs on loan. And when the deal is done between our football club and theirs, sometimes those players need to sit down with a manager and talk about their position, talk about where they'll play, talk about how the team works. And I've been able to hopefully give them a vision as to what we want to do going forward, with absolutely no guarantees they're going to play. If you look at the goalkeeping situation, apart from one mistake from young Connor earlier, I think we'd have all travelled to the game today saying this is a toss of the coin. Both have been immense, immaculate in training and in the bits of minutes they've had in games, and that's the same equally in other positions. And so we're still working hard to make sure we get the full balance of the squad. We're just about almost there.
Jason Cummings was an eye-opener, I think, from supporters' point of view, in the sense they didn't expect him to be able to come into a League One side given his goal record. Was there a lot done to make that deal happen?
Well, there wasn't much talking, to be fair. I think from the minute I met Jason, it does help when I've been away from Scotland a long, long time, but it does help. I think I spoke more Scottish to him. I come out with a few words that he could understand. But no, listen, I met the kid with his representative, who's a good guy, another Scotsman, and they made it clear that they were having a chat with me along with 3 or 4 others, and 100% we got to the end of our first couple of hours together, and we left, and Jason's agent called me to say that he's cancelled one other meeting. He wants to come to Posh, and we've still got to get him fit, we've still got to get him sharp. He's worked so hard in this trip, for example, but as is the rest of the lads. We've got a real good group here, Phil.
A few Scots lads actually in the squad. It's hard to understand some of them, but then I'm getting used to your accent by now. It's a good blend to have, isn't it? If you bring in someone down from a different country, if they're on their own, it does take a little while to settle. But there's a few of them in the squad, and they're making their presence felt.
Well, I think Jack Baldwin and Rhys Bennett were having a little banter with me the other night saying the Scottish Brigade and the Celts are taking over. And I was looking at likes of Naismith, now, although Kingy's not with us, but you're looking at Jason and you're looking at Mark O'Hara. It has to be said, every one of these guys have come down, they've embellished what our football club is about. They're young, they're hungry, they want to be successful, they want to be in the team. And the boys down here love them. They were, they're part of us. We're all in it together. And Master, I don't care whether you're Scottish, English, Irish, Welsh, Chinese, Iran, Pakistan.
Running out of countries now.
I've not got the intelligence to name more than 10. But it doesn't matter to me. I just want good footballers. More important, I want good living footballers who want to work hard, deliver first and foremost for themselves. That's why they're in the game. And then for Posh and then for our supporters, because ultimately, I know our chairman tops it up every month by a lot of money. And he'll look at me when I use the word top up, but and the other directors, Stuart and Jason. But in saying all of that, the supporters are the real reason.
You mentioned signings and completing the jigsaw. A target man is obviously something that was mentioned to the chairman, and it's been widely reported as someone you're interested in terms of a type of player. Is that still ongoing? You're still trying to find the right one?
Well, is that a target man, or is it someone with pace who can be big and strong at the same time? We've opened our mind up to a number of strikers. But what you find, I found a big difference coming to Watford Darren McAntony. If you make a phone call, which the chairman always says to me, make the phone call and give me the whole deal between me and Barry. So if Barry makes a phone call, tries to ascertain a value, we speak to the agent and the player to see if the player would fancy it, to speak to the agent to see the type of money's involved. And then the board can make a genuine decision. They know the cost of something. But when we sometimes wake up and read media reports that we bid and different things. And as our chairman says to me, don't worry about it, get used to it under him. It's just nonsense. So we know the one or two that we bid for that's been unfortunate that we couldn't get them in the door, but we've got our eye on a couple now, and we'll see where our chairman and Barry can take them in the next few days.